Sonido Software presents Story of a Studio, where we meet with recording studio owners and audio professionals, hear of their passions, and share their unique stories with you. Hey, this is Brady with Story of a Studio. Today, I am speaking with Del with Hydrate Entertainment. How's it going, man?
How you doing, man? I'm doing well.
Good stuff. I've been wanting to get you on for some time. I know you've got a really rich history in the Atlanta music market, and so excited to hear about your story, about your studio, your past experience, and everything else. I don't even know where to begin, to be honest, but I think, you have an awesome studio today. You're doing a lot of different services, but I want to roll this back a little bit and hear a little bit more about your story. I would love to hear how you got into audio. I'm sure it's been many years ago, but what led to, becoming what you are today in the audio industry?
Okay. Yeah. So, like most people, it started pretty early. For me, it was two. At the age of 2.5, I started playing drums. My dad's a drummer, so obviously being around him, somehow I was intrigued by it. And he taught me how to play, and I legit have video of me playing in church at 2.5 years old.
Pocket already, boy. Pocket already.
So it's not something I just say to say, like that really happened. So I've been playing drums for a very long time. And so obviously through the years being a musician, going to different concerts, like start seeing different things. And I was really interested in saxophone, like early in my elementary school days. And so my parents basically told me, like, okay, if you want to play saxophone, you have to learn how to play piano. So I started taking piano lessons. And then after I did that for a little while, they finally bought me a saxophone. And I was super excited, and I completely stopped playing piano. I was like, all right, I'm done with piano. Like, the whole thing was for me to get to the saxophone. So I got to the saxophone, and I was done with piano. But we had a piano in the house. I had a keyboard. So I kept tinkering around kind of with the keys, and just because it was there for me to do, but not taking any formal lessons or studying any kind of way. So through all of that, I started kind of composing and writing my own music. And doing that, and the keyboard had a record function, so I would record on the keyboard, and this type of record function, like where you had to record the entire song through, like there was no punch in or punch out, like you had to play the entire thing. So I learned a lot there. And so in my early teen years, my dad was working on an album. He was actually started to sing and write. And so he was recording at a studio, and I got to go to a session. And at that moment, it was like, oh, what is this place? Like, I see console, lights, buttons, all these racks and all this stuff going on. It's like, okay, this is cool. How do I get into this? What is this for? And you start learning more about that. And so it's like, okay, wait a minute. I've been writing these songs, and I need to record them and learn how to do that. So my dad actually had a 4-track machine at the house. So I started tinkering with that. Like, okay, let me see if I can even do this on my own. So I started messing around with the 4-track machine, and was doing pretty decent with that, and finally decided, you know what, I want to dive into this a little bit further. And so I had money saved up from gigging, because I was actually working as a musician. And so I took that money and bought Pro Tools. This was when the Inbox 2 first came out. And Pro Tools 7. And Pro Tools 7 was so new that in the box, they still had 6.9 disc in the box, just in case 7 wasn't working right with your system. So I've been on Pro Tools since 7. I bought a Gateway Pentium 4 laptop, because at the time, Pentium 4 was like the thing to have. I think the computer had like maybe 2 gigs of RAM.
Oh, yeah.
And by today's standards, that's nothing. And so I started recording. Like I got my Pro Tools set up, and I dove in. Like I literally just started recording and just testing stuff out. I had a keyboard in my room. I had some KRK Rocket monitors that I got and just kind of just was going for it. I had the MXL 990, 91 pack of microphones. So just like making whatever work. And then this was what was really crazy because it's like, okay, wait a minute. You're a drummer and you've got an interface that's got 2 inputs on it. Like, so I'm literally like, okay, let me put this microphone in the room like this, and then kind of put this one on the kick. So at least I get kind of the kick in the recording and just kind of the overall room sound, and just really experimenting and trying to figure things out. And I had a friend in high school that had wrote a song that I heard him sing at a talent show. And I was like, yo, that's a really nice song. Like, I think we should do something with that. So I recorded that song, brought him over to the house in my bedroom and recorded the song. And I brought another buddy over. He recorded bass to it, and I laid down the drums. And so we had this nice little production. And it was like, okay, cool. Like, you know, I'm recording. And so from there, I'm kind of approaching senior year, high school. It's like, okay, parents, of course, you got to do something. You got to go to college, like you got to further your education, all that good stuff that we've been told for years and years and years. So I was in band. So naturally I was doing marching band. And so it was like, okay, cool. Let me go to HBCU because my parents went to Morris Brown. I did marching band camps with Clark Atlanta and FAMU and things like that. And so it was like, all right, let me see what's out there. So I started having conversations with FAMU and Clark Atlanta and all these different schools about me possibly getting there. And by that time, I had been in all-state jazz band, regular all-state, saxophone and percussion. So like they were throwing all the deals like, hey, we can get you this, you come here and you'll be in the band program, blah, yeah. And I was still like, okay, this is cool, but is that really what I want to do? And so I don't remember how I came across it, but an ad for Full Sail approached me. Maybe it was through Recording Magazine or something like that. And I was like, okay, that looks interesting. And so I showed it to my parents and looked at the website. It's like, oh, this is amazing. So we took a trip down to Florida and toured the school. And it was like, okay, yes, this is it. Like, I mean, when you go to the campus, it's so amazing in Full Sail. So you're definitely instantly blown away if you ever go down there. And so I was like, okay, this is where I want to go. This is where I want to be. I want to get into recording. And it still hadn't really clicked for me that being a recording engineer yet. Like I was still kind of in the just wanting to know how to do it better. And I was playing saxophone as a soloist. Going around and doing like gigs as a saxophone player with tracks. So I was like, okay, I at least need to be able to record my own songs and do it well and play drums for people and track. And so that's why I kind of went to Full Sail. Like for me, like I went there for me to get better. And through being at Full Sail, you just learn so much. You meet so many people. And I met some guys that had already been in the industry, and we started having class and talking about what they do. It's like music producer. And I'm like, wait a minute, like all this time, like I know about, you know, people like P. Diddy and Rick Rubin and all these guys, but it didn't click. Like nothing really clicked until I started talking to people and having classes and realizing, wait a minute, I recorded a song with a friend in high school and I brought in a bass player and I organized a session. So I'm a producer. Like technically I'm producing records. So it's like, all right, I'm gonna be a producer. And that moment it's like, okay, cool. I gotta create a name. And so I created this persona, Dehydrate, was the kind of the thing back then. And I started producing records and looking for songwriters. And when I was at Full Sail, I had an apartment. So I actually had set up my living room to be like a little recording studio. I had my desk, my monitors, keep all my stuff in there. And I would literally use my closet as a vocal booth because we all know closet's got a lot of clothes in there and absorb sound. So I was like, okay, that's the thing. So literally was recording different writers and artists down in Florida. And so moving through that period, I finished my recording arts degree, and then I continued on to do my bachelor's in music business because I figured, okay, at this time I'm starting to think producer, recording studio, business. Like, okay, I need to understand the business and how to move and do things like that. So it only made sense to me, at least, to go and learn about the business and get some type of formal education on that side. And once I was done with that, it was time to figure out the next move. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll probably go back to Atlanta because Atlanta's a hot spot for so many different things. And so I might as well go back home. So I got an internship with Jermaine Dupri at his studio. And at the same time, I got a job at Guitar Center. Because of course, we're musicians in industry, like, hey, you got to have money and work. So like naturally you go work at Guitar Center. That's what we do. So I went and worked at Guitar Center full time and then also interning with Jermaine Dupri. And I was with Jermaine Dupri for about 6 or 7 months. And a lot of people don't know much about his studio, but it's called Southside Studios, and it's a private studio, meaning that it's only him, his artists, and his producers, his songwriters, people he works with on a regular basis. So it's not like your typical commercial facility to where there's just random people booking the studio and there's artists in and out all times of day. Just, you just meet whoever. Like it's literally like it's very closed and just it doesn't have the traffic. And so I didn't see any upward movement there because of that. And also he had a full-time engineer that worked for him. So it was like, okay, this guy's always here. He's not going anywhere. There's not a lot of traffic here. So I didn't see any upward mobility there for me. So I decided, you know what? I'll let this go. I got a full-time job. I also had this studio built. My parents built this in the basement of their home for me. So I had this, already working for me, and I was taking gigs when I could, working with different people. So it's like, you know what? I'll just do my own thing. And so I did that. I left my internship, worked my full-time job, and stayed here. And I've just continued to work with different writers, different musicians. I've been a music director for a lot of artists in Atlanta, just playing, arranging shows and doing things. And so that at Full Sail, I got Pro Tools certified. So that happened for me. So all these years, I worked at Guitar Center for about 4 years. Now, this is where my story changes.
Yep, let's hear it.
I had a customer that would come in and spend lots and lots of money all the time. I never really asked what he did because at the time it's just like, okay, cool. You work with the customers. You get personal enough to know who they are and what they're into because you want to be a good salesman, but you don't really dig deep and really get to know them. But he drove a Rolls Royce, and every time he came, he spent a lot of money. So one day I was off, and I get a call from one of my coworkers. Say, hey, the guy with the Rolls Royce, he's here. Like, okay, what's up? He's looking for a Pro Tools expert. And so around that time, I'm the Pro Tools expert. Everybody knows Dell is the guy. Like, he knows Pro Tools inside and out. He's certified, all the things. So I was like, cool. I give me the address. I'll go and see him. And so I got the address and went out to see him, met with him and my coworker at the time because he kind of introduced me to that situation. So when I get there, he takes me for a tour around his facility because he had a really nice facility. And this building was extremely nice. I mean, marble floors, just ridiculous. And I'm super young at the time too. So we go through this room that has an icon, a projector screen, and there's a guy in there sitting there working on a movie. Introduced me to the guy and then walks me to the back to his office and says, all right, so out there, that movie he's working on, he's actually working on another project. So we need somebody to mix this film. And at that moment, I was like, wait a minute, film? I'm a music guy. Like I play drums, I play keys, I play saxophone, I record vocals, bands, like that's my thing. He's like, yeah, we have had like 3 people try to mix it and he's kind of stepping in, helping us out, but he's got another project he's got to do. So we need somebody to step in, and they tell me you're the Pro Tools guy. So how much would you charge? And so at that moment, it's like, okay, cool. In my mind, really quickly, I'm processing. There's 2 scenarios here. First scenario, I get paid. I do a bad job. I don't get any more work from this. Second scenario, I get paid. I do a good job, potentially get more work from this. Either one of those scenarios, I get paid. I'm like, okay, I think I threw out just a random number like, $50 an hour. And he's like, okay, cool, no problem. And I was like, wait a minute. I said $50 an hour. He said, no problem. Normally in music, there's kind of some pushback on that. Artists like, oh,
Yeah.
can you do like 30, 35? Like, that's a little much for me right now. And so he didn't push back on it. So I kind of had that feeling of, did I charge too low?
Yeah, right.
Or whatever it was. But, he's like, so when can you start? I was like, well, today I got nothing going on. I'm off work. So I can start. That was like a Friday. So I literally worked that entire day, probably like 10 hours. Then he's like, okay, cool. So can you come back tomorrow? Because we're still going through this film. Yeah, I'll be back tomorrow. Came in tomorrow. Cool. No problem. Then ended that day, another really long shift. Then he's like, okay, can you come back on Sunday? Like, yeah, but I got to play at church first. Well, what time you get out of church? I'm like, oh, like 1:30. So it's like, you be here at 3. It's like, okay, yeah, I'll be here at 3. So I come through and we're getting through the film. I'm doing my thing. And I don't know anything about post. I know audio, and I had a couple of post classes at Full Sail, but nothing to where I would dare call myself a post-production guy. Right. But it was just like, okay, these vocals, music, some sound effect, just mix it. Like, I didn't know about Isotope RX or anything. Like, it was just literally just like, make the film sound good. That's what I know how to do. So I just did what I knew best. And so Sunday's ending, and he's like, all right, cool. So the director wants to come in tomorrow and view this. What time can you come? I was like, oh, I go to work and I'd be here at this time. So, okay, cool. So the director's going to come in and watch this down with you. And so sure enough, I come Monday, director is there, sits back on the couch. All right, play it. I play it. We stop at a couple sections. All right, can we do something there? What's going on right there? And we're fixing things kind of in the moment, interacting, and we get through. He's like, okay, it's good. A couple things, you just button that up and we're ready. I'm like, all right, nice. So I finished that film.
And this is this a full length film?
This is a full, like, this is a feature film. This is a 90-minute feature film that was going to a network. I didn't know where it was going at the time, but it was going to a network. And I didn't know anything about loudness levels, nothing, just straight up mixing. So the guy that hired me, he's like, all right, so don't forget to send me your invoice. And I had forgot that this was kind of a paid deal. Like, I was tracking my time but I completely forgot. So I was like, all right, no problem. So it's like, okay, wait a minute. I never really did a invoice before. Like, I had, people, we did, like, I tell them how much I charge for things and then we do that, but never like an invoice. I had to go, look up online, like, how do you invoice customers, blah, blah, blah. So got like the Microsoft Word template and just did quick invoice and sent it to him. He's like, all right, cool. I'll send this over to accounting. A couple of days later, hey, your check's ready. Come by, pick it up. Go pick up the check, open it up. Oh, this is legit. Like, check. Yep, that's the right number. And at that moment, I was like, okay, wait a minute. I've been doing music all this time. I don't think I've ever made this much money doing music, like, just being completely honest with myself. And so in that conversation of getting me my check and me verifying it, he's like, so, let's talk a little bit. What do you think about working here? Like, you mean like full time? It's like, yeah, like, this is the audio post facility. I've got these projects that are coming in. I've got other stuff I'm trying to do, and I need audio engineers to work. I'm like, sure. And kind of, tracking back just slightly, I was already getting burnt out of Guitar Center. Like, I was tired of it. Like, it was just, it's a place of work. Like, you're working. I was burnt out, been there for 4 years, just like, okay, it's time to go. But I didn't know a way out. Like, I had slowly started trying to calculate and figure out, okay, how much mixes do I need to do? Or, how many sessions do I need to do to kind of make the same money I was making, but nothing really concrete. And so that came across me, and it was just like, okay, this is the opportunity. He's like, I'm like, sure, no problem. Like, that'll be cool. And so he's like, all right, so we'll drop some paperwork, and I'll tell you how much you're gonna make, and yada, yada, yada. So I get the paperwork, and it's like $43,000 a year plus bonuses for different projects, and like, I'm 20 something. And showed it to my parents, and they're like, oh wow, that's pretty nice. It's a 20-year-old kid still trying to figure life out, and you're getting a job engineering, kind of doing what you like to do. And it's gonna pay you that much. It's like, okay, yeah, let's do this. So I put my notice in the Guitar Center and accepted that position and hit the ground running. Like, I started working on TV shows, So I got to work on Ricky Smiley TV show, work with David and Tamla Mann, different movies for different networks in Atlanta. I got to work with Tommy Ford on a few projects before he passed away. And so I just got fully immersed in that world. I did documentaries and just really dove in. And so it was just a complete just left field. Like I had no idea post-production was a thing. Like I watched movies, I watched TV, but never really thought about the fact that somebody did the audio for it. And I just got thrown into it. And I was apparently pretty good at it. And so it stuck and I stayed there. I was still doing music on the side when I could, but I had that job. And then sadly that facility closed down. And so looking for my next thing. Well, a friend of mine was like, "Hey man, I know the director at SAE. Like, what you think about teaching?" Like, I don't know. Like, I need a job right now because I don't have a job. You know, I got a few projects lined up, but nothing really concrete. And so I went and had a meeting at SAE, and they were like, "Yeah, we need somebody like start Monday, and we got this new class. We got it." So I was like, "All right, you're a post-production guy. You know, post-production." And I'm like, I guess I know post-production. I'm still technically learning it, but I've done enough work to where, yeah, sure, I can teach that.
Yeah.
So I started teaching at SAE part-time. And then that was going pretty well. And then a full-time position opened up. And I said, yeah, I'll take that. And so I became a full-time instructor at SAE and was there for 4 years.
Wow.
But during that time, I was still working on music and post-production projects. I did different pilots for different TV shows, commercials, and I got a chance to work on Greenleaf. So a friend of mine that I worked with at Guitar Center, he is a film composer. And so he calls me and says, "Hey, you know, I got an opportunity to work on Greenleaf as the music producer, and it's a gospel show. Again, here's something that Dell's good at. Dell knows gospel because Dell's played in church. He produces gospel records. He even had a gospel artist signed to his label." So I was like, "All right, you're the guy." So he's like, "All right, send me some stuff. We'll work this out." So I sent him a bunch of stuff and he got the gig. So I was like, yeah, this is awesome TV show. And so we started the first episode right here in this studio. It's like, all right, this is gonna be great. But then the schedule started to roll out. Because at the time, nobody really knew what was going on. Just like, okay, cool. It's a TV show. We're going to produce some songs and, you know, kind of the same thing we're all used to doing. But then it turned out like, no, this is like an on-call, like random, just things just happened. Production schedules change. You never really know what's going to go down. And so it became, okay, my friend was like, "I'm going to keep you on as a musician and help, you know, produce these records, yada, yada. But as your friend, I don't know if I want to tell you to quit your job because I still don't really know what this situation is and what it's like." So it's like, you know what? That makes a lot of sense. We're dealing with actors. It's Oprah Winfrey Network. So it's a ton of stuff going on that's like high end. So it's like, okay, your studio's nice. Your sound quality is nice. You know what you're doing, but it's not a commercial facility. Facts. Like I can't even deny that. Like it's a home studio. At the end of the day, it's a home studio. So brought in another engineer. I stayed on kind of assisting on some sessions as an engineer, but I was playing on all the records. And so that's kind of how I got the Image Awards and the Grammy nominations that came from the Greenleaf stuff. And all that time I had a full-time job. So a lot of people still don't even know that. Like all of that work I was doing on Greenleaf and different TV shows and stuff, I still had a full-time job, like teaching at SAE all during that time. Craziness, of course. Working, you know, basically 2 jobs. I used to say I have 2 jobs. Like I go teach and then I'd come in engineers. So that snowballed into, I did a session for an episode and there was an assistant there. Just got to talking. What do you do? Where do you work? I work for Tyler Perry. Oh, that's cool. Like you work for Tyler Perry Studios. This is around the time he had just built the big shebang. So it's like we all know what's going on with Tyler Perry in Atlanta. And so we just having general conversation, telling about the post work I've done, you know, just engineer talk basically. the next day after that session, I get a text from him. Hey, send me your resume. Okay. I send my resume to him. He's like, cool. I just gave your resume to the post-production supervisor at Tyler Perry Studios. Be looking for a call. Okay. Still kind of not processing it because we meet people all the time. They say, oh, we'll get together. We'll do whatever. And nothing ever happens. So not really thinking much of it. Sure enough, a couple of days later, I get a phone call. Post-production supervisor at Tyler Perry Studios. Hey, man, can I talk to you for a little bit? So we have a nice hour-long conversation. Ask me about the work I've worked on, different shows, and my experience. And so he's like, yeah, I definitely love to get you out here once we get the facility done, because they were still building the post area. We got these new shows that are coming, and we're going to need some engineers. Cool. So a little time goes by. Sure enough, I get another call. All right, man, when can you come down? So I was like, sometime this week. So we set up a date. I went down. I mean, super security. Anybody who's ever been there knows the place is super secure. Like I had to go to security desk and get a badge, like your ID, like all this stuff just to get in the building for a meeting. And so I get in there, take a tour, have a conversation. It's like, yeah, so, are you in the union? I'm like, no, I'm not in the union. He's like, all right, don't worry about it. We'll get you in the union. And so he's like, but we definitely need you here. We got these TV shows and we got to get the post happening ASAP. So I get in there, I put my 2 weeks in at SAE, and again, same thing with Guitar Center. I was burnt out, like looking for a way out. All my friends are like, dude, you got to get out of there. Like it's not where you need to be. And everybody that I'm around kind of knows what I do and I'm good at it, but I'm just in this weird spot of you're really good at what you do, but you haven't hit that plateau and that next level. So got that opportunity and I ran with I left SAE and went to go work for Tyler Perry. And this is around the time when Oval and Sisters started. So I started working for Tyler Perry. Then that ended for me. And it became a situation, okay, what you gonna do next? That's kind of when I had the realization that all these years and all this work I've done, I have my own studio, but I've never really run my studio. Like it's been a thing that I've done, but I've never taken it seriously as a business and my full-time thing. So I had money saved up. Me and the wife kind of chatted it up and was like, you know what? Now's a pretty decent time for me to give the studio a shot. Like we got some money in the bank. So I've got, we kind of calculate how much time is left before that money runs out. So if no money comes in, we at least know we got this much time.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. I'll give it a shot. So I gave it a shot and calls started coming in, of course, doing social media and all that kind of stuff. People noticing, oh, Dell's available. He's in the studio every day. Like, okay, call Dell. Like he's the guy. So more calls start coming in. I get a call from a friend. Hey man, I got this ESPN special that they're doing for the 100 years. We need audio mix, we need sound design. Sure, let's go. All right, this how much it's paying. Yeah, no problem. It's ESPN. Like I'm like, yeah, send it. So I worked on that. Everybody's like, yo, this sounds great. Like this is amazing. Like the sound design, the vocal, like it's beautiful. Like they love it. The clients are happy, and he's like, hey, they're gonna submit this for Emmys. Okay, cool, no problem. Still not thinking nothing of it. Emmys nominations roll around. Sure enough, project's up there, Emmy nominated for the writing of it. But it's one of those things where with the way these awards, where everybody that's attached usually to these awards, whatever you did, you get your credit and you get awarded as, okay, worked for. So like when I got Grammy nominated, it's like Grammy nominated as drummer on X project. So it's like, it's still a thing. And so when I left Tyler Perry, there was a moment of kind of like, am I good enough? Do I really know what I'm doing? But after that happened, it's like, okay, I am good enough. I know what I'm doing. This is just, things happen, jobs rotate, people come and go. So it's just like one of those things. So I was like, all right, I'm going to take post-production head on. And so I converted my room to 5.1 And that was before I even had 5.1 work. It was just like I started having conversations with directors in LA about films. And lo and behold, I had all of the 5.1 equipment sitting in the room in boxes. And I get a call, hey, can you do 5.1? Actually, as a matter of fact, I can. All right, cool. So we're going to give you this film. And so I set everything up and got it working, did my calibration, and it was like film comes in, I immediately start 5.1 mixing on a film, and then several others have just circled after that. And so it's just been a nonstop thing now. It's just like I'm working in post-production, I'm working in music. Like I still tell people I'm 60-40 right now. Like I can't say I'm 100% in either space. I'm living in both worlds.
But 60% post?
60% post, just
roughly,
because those projects take longer usually. So when it's like a post project comes in, it's like, okay, the schedule gets blocked off for X amount of time because you kind of got to focus on that and get it done. They have hard deadlines. Like, music stuff sometimes just fluctuates. People don't really know when they want to get stuff done. Whereas in film, TV, it's like, hey, this is the deadline. It's going to the network. We have to have it submitted for this, that, and the third. And then, different parts of the year, like, okay, we got this special for this event that just happens. We need to get this out because it's a perfect timing for this and all this stuff. So post-production, definitely, I just block my schedule off pretty much for most of that stuff. Yeah,
that's pretty wild. I mean, the twists and turns that you've talked about in this story, it's been perfect. Like, I mean, I'm sure there's been a lot of challenges and trials, and you talked a little bit about like some self-doubt at some points, which I think everybody goes through, we all go through, but it's so interesting. And, these, 20 minutes or so we've been talking to see the evolution from the point when you were 2 years old playing the drums to the point where you are today. I mean, you should be proud of where you are. It's pretty wild.
Thank you.
From a small one-person home studio to a large multi-room facility, audio production studios are looking for the best tools for effectively managing their studio business. As an audio professional, you may be trying to manage everything from keeping new project leads from falling through the cracks, making sense of your weekly production schedule, keeping track of project timelines and progress, understanding which invoices have been sent and which payments need to be collected, how to best receive feedback from the latest version of your mix, and so much more. Some audio professionals try to cobble together a dozen different software apps to make sense of their studio business workflow, which becomes cumbersome. But you don't have to. Not when you have Sonido Software. Sonido is designed for audio production studios like yours to bring your full studio management into a single software platform designed for managing your daily production efforts. In one system, you manage all your contacts and leads, your projects and task lists, your full studio schedule, your financials, and much more. Consolidating many of these benefits into a single system saves you time. It eliminates the many individual disconnected apps and provides a more intuitive studio management system designed specifically for your audio studio. Managing your studio can be simple and rewarding. Why cobble together a complex mess of systems when you can more easily manage your studio with Sonido Software? Click the link in the show notes or video description to see how your studio can get started with Sonido Software today. So my first question is this. Coming from a background playing drums for many years and saxophone and, building yourself up as a musician in that sense, how do you feel that plays into where you are today?
I think it has a very strong foundation. And when you go and look at a lot of some of the top engineers and you really kind of study their background, it's similar stories. Like they were musicians, like, and they've been on the other side of the glass, so to speak. And they kind of just migrate to the other side. So it's been helpful in the fact of, especially like dealing with live instruments, is that I know what live instruments sound like. I play drums, I play piano, I've recorded them. I know what my drums sound like naturally. So it's like, okay, when it comes to mic and a drum kit, I know what it's supposed to sound like. If I put a mic on it and the tom sounds wrong, it's like, all right, let me go fix something because that's not how a tom is supposed to sound. And so I think it just gives me a unique perspective on sound and how things work, and just knowing what it's supposed to be versus what we think it is. So I definitely feel like it's helped, but it's definitely not something that is a must. Like I wouldn't say to somebody who has no musical background can't be a good engineer, because at the end of the day, if you have good ears, then you have good ears. Like that, nothing changes that. But it just gives me a different perspective, and it helps me work on certain things that other people might not be able to work on. For instance, I do a lot of gospel music. It's just one of those things. You can't do it if you don't know it. Like it's just one of those things. Like if a hip hop guy tries to do gospel, it usually just has a certain thing that's like, it's not right. Like something's wrong with it. I get a lot of calls because I do live instrumentation. Like I've always been a live instrument guy. Like even being in Atlanta, where hip hop and trap is the biggest thing we have running for us pretty much. But being one of the people that deals with live instruments, it gives me a different leg, because people are like, okay, when they need live drums, they need live bass or whatever it is, like call Dell. He's on that list of people that knows how to deal with that stuff. And you can tell, somebody who's never worked with the live drum kit before, you quickly know by how they set the mics up, and then you start hearing the tones that they're getting. You're just like, yeah, that's not gonna work, man. The snare has no resonance to it, or hey man, there's a ring in the snare. You don't hear that, or the tom mic's clipping, and just little things that people don't pay much attention to, or phase. Like phase is a big one, especially when you deal with drums. You have so many mics on the drums. Funny story about that. I was just in a session 2 days ago, and they're playing back, and I was playing drums, so I wasn't recording this, and I'm listening back to the playback, and I'm just like, something's not right. And the producer, he stops the playback. He's like, "What's wrong, Dale?" I'm like, "Can you solo the kick?" And so there's 3 mics on the kick, and he solos it, and they play. I'm like, I look over at the keyboard player, like, "You hear the flam?" Like he's like, "Kind of." And I'm like, "Hey, matter of fact, zoom into the waveforms." And we look at the waveforms. Somebody's like, "Oh, they look good." I said, "No, they don't." Zoomed in some more. The kick, sub kick mic was flipped, and it was slightly over. And the engineer's like, "Good ears, man." I'm just like, the only explanation I can give for it is like, I'm used to it, and this is full-time ears. Like I never thought about it when I was working full-time job and engineering, but now that I've been full-time as an engineer for 2 years now, there's a difference. The way I hear things, the way I approach things is so different. Like I was kind of even blown away. Like I heard that phase difference on playback with everything going on. I was still able to hear the fact that the sub kick mic was not right. It's just like, oh, so those are just full-time ears.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Working.
That's wild. Nice. So now your studio today, Hydrate Entertainment. Tell me, you'd mentioned earlier about the name Dehydrate was like a persona or an alias that you were building at some point in your career, right? Early on.
Yep.
You've carried that through. Tell us a little bit more about that. How did you come up with the name, and what does it mean to you?
So the name, I have to credit that to my dad. Because around the time when I was trying to figure out the name thing, my dad's always been very instrumental in everything I've done. Both of my parents, they've been very instrumental, and they support me like 150% in what I do. So my dad was at Zaxby's, and they had like hydrate and different definitions of hydrate on a cup. And he kind of wrote that down on a napkin. It's like, hey, this hydrate thing's kind of cool, revitalization. You need water to survive, and it's kind of a part of everything. One of the solid elements that we have on Earth. It's like, okay, cool. Hydrate. My name's Elevante. Dehydrate. Like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like, we'll work that in, and then it's like, all right, time to start my business. Like, Hydrate Entertainment. I'm Dehydrate. The company's Hydrate Entertainment. That's solid. Like, that's a cool deal. So we started that, and I ran with the Hydrate Entertainment, and now it's funny because I feel like I've lost some of what it is and what it means, just in the day-to-day, and just being on it so long. But That's what everybody knows me as. Like, it's to the point to where even when I was dehydrated, people would call me Hydrate. Like, they would just shorten it, call me Hydrate. And I used to kind of try to, push, like, when I worked on projects, like, oh, it's been hydrated, or come get hydrated, things like that. And I kind of let it die when I stopped producing records. I was like, you know what? I changed my name to Dell Mixed It, and I stopped kind of promoting that, but I left my emails dehydrated, hydrateentertainment.com. And the people that already knew me, the records I produced, I didn't worry about going back into all music or anything like that and changing my name. It's like, you know what? Those things are already there, so just let them be. And recently I worked on projects and clients have literally said to me, oh, we've been hydrated now. It's like, oh, so all the time I spent trying to push that as a thing, now it just naturally becomes a thing. Like, people are saying it to me. So it's like, oh, that's kind of cool. So, Hydrate Entertainment is my company. And when I named it, I didn't purposefully say entertainment, because at the time I didn't really know what I was going to do, but I knew entertainment was a broad enough thing, having been in music business, kind of understanding like, okay, cool, branding and different things like that. If I say studio, then it's assumed that I'm either recording, photography, or something that is like a studio. So I didn't necessarily want to be only a studio, because I just knew, something's going to happen bigger than that. And so it was like, okay, cool, be entertainment. And so what that means for me now is I am building a full service entertainment company. Being that I work in music, I work in post-production, I've always been instrumental in helping people find songwriters, to find singers, to find musicians, whatever it is they need. Even now, I've been helping people find production sound mixers or assistant directors and all these different things. So I'm like, okay, cool. As a company, I'm just building a solid company. Like, okay, we have everything you need to do whatever project you have that is entertainment based. And so that's where we are, Hydrate Entertainment. If you go on social media, you go on the website, it says post-production and recording facility, and that's currently what it is, but eventually that's going to change to just being full service, kind of whatever you need across the board, we've got it.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's terrific. And today it's just you at your studio, right?
Well, today it is just me at my studio, and funny enough, I'm actually in the process. I just got some stuff today from somebody. I'm starting to look for an assistant, even though I don't want to call it that. Like, it's more of I need a number 2 or number 3, because the amount of work I'm starting to get and the type of work it is, I don't need somebody that doesn't already kind of know what's going on. Like, because I'm looking for people that I'm going to put to work. Like, hey, you're going to be working. Like, this ain't no make coffee for me, because I'm actually a really big coffee drinker. So I got to make my own coffee anyways. So I don't need you to make coffee. I don't need you to go and get food or whatever. We got DoorDash for all that stuff. So I don't need you to be a runner. Like, I'm going to give you a computer and I need you to do X, Y, and Z kind of deal. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. So we're at the expansion phase for sure.
Yeah, that's good, because I was going to ask you about the vision for the future, and it sounds like you've got a pretty stable handle on the services that you're offering now. You're looking to expand that further, and start building a team. That's pretty wild. Does it excite you?
It does excite me, and it makes me nervous at the same time, because funny, literally this morning, me and my wife had a conversation about rates. It's like, okay, cool. My rates are technically for me, like as a solo person, but now I got to start thinking about facility rates and company rates. Like, okay, cool. If you're going to have a payroll and be paying people, like, it's got to make sense that, okay, there's money to go around. Like, and so I'm starting to slowly process all that. So it's exciting, but it's also nerve-wracking at the same time. It's like, oh my gosh, I got to raise my rates, or I got to pay people. And so the money that I thought I was going to make on this project, I'm not necessarily making that same amount of money, because I got to pay out to this particular person, which on other projects, it's been like that when I do contractors, I need a bass player or whatever. But now it's like becoming a big thing. Like, okay, cool. If I'm going to do a project for X amount of money, and then I'm going to have this person doing some dialogue editing with me, then they need to be paid X amount of dollars. And I'm one of those people that I know what the rates are and what they should be. And I don't want to underpay somebody just because I can. Like, to me, that's not right, because we need to be pushing rates up and making sure rates stay pretty consistent and not have this hold different rates for different levels, and that stuff is just getting too old. I mean, you got people that have 10 years of experience and they're getting paid less than people that work at McDonald's. It's like, man, that doesn't make sense.
Oh yeah.
To me. So I definitely don't want to be a part of perpetuating that. Like, I want to make sure people are paid what they're worth and what they should be getting paid.
That's awesome. Good for you. Now most of that growth, you're looking at that on the post-production side, or is this going to be these broad roles?
It started as that when I initially started thinking about it, but now that the expansion is kind of rapidly coming to me, it's going to be everything. Like, I've been talking to people about music stuff because I just got back from last weekend doing a live album recording. So I've got that album recording to do. I've got an artist that I'm engineering an EP for. So that's happening. I've got a film coming in. I've got a documentary coming in. And so these things are starting to just kind of pile on. And it's like, I've had it before where the schedule says one thing, but then what happens is it becomes another thing. And so what I've got to do is I've got to make sure I've got enough people working that I can get things done on a certain schedule and adhere to that. So I'm going to be building a team for music and post-production, and the scariest thing about it is you know, as a person who does a lot of things, you feel like nobody can be me. Nobody can do what I do. But the natural reality of it is that's not necessarily true. It might be harder to find them, but they do exist. You just got to dig for them. Or in my case, build a team that has different things. I might have to get somebody who's really good on the music side and then another person who's really good on the post side and just kind of communicate and make things work that way instead of trying to look for one person that can do music and post, because I know that's harder to find. I am a unique person, and people like me are rare, because most people, it's either they do post or they do music. There's not too much in between of that. So I want to make sure that I'm able to cover it. And again, as trying to build a facility and a company, I need to have all bases covered. If I'm slammed on a post-production project, I should still be able to say, hey, we've got this band that needs to come in and record. You can handle that. Yeah. While we're over here doing the posting, you can handle the band. It's still the Hydrate Entertainment brand. I've built up enough branding now that people know when they come to me, they know what to expect. They're getting a certain level of quality because quality is always at the top for me. Like, I'm not one of the people that will say something's just good enough or it's okay. I mean, if you just look at my equipment, it just goes to show that, I make sure quality is of the utmost important. I literally, the live recording I did, it's a studio recording. Like, it's Focusrite RedNet, and just it sounds really good. It's really clean, really good converters, whereas I could have just gotten a digital mixer, USB out, and recorded it that way. But for me, it's like, the quality of that is so. Like, it's okay and it's decent enough, but the project is a live album. Like, that's what it is. It's a live recording. So it's like, okay, let's not skimp on the recording side. Let's make sure the recording side is as good as it possibly can be.
Yeah. Well, and what resonates for me with what you're saying is that growth as an entrepreneur. I mean, you've been an entrepreneur for years while doing, your career as well. But I think one of the hardest things for entrepreneurs, it doesn't matter if it's in a studio setting or, any small business, is how do I scale this? But then also, how do I let some of the things that I love to do go and establish that trust with a new employee? But you're not going to scale it without that. And the nice thing is you've got the ear and the experience that you can still demand the same quality, find the right individuals, but you'll still be able to keep that quality, I think.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the thing, just wrapping your head around the fact that you can still get the quality. And of course, you have your checks and balances. Like, you make sure, nothing goes out without you hearing it or seeing it first, and those types of things. So I think there is still definitely a way to make sure the quality is still what it needs to be. And because it's your team, it's nothing wrong with being able to go to somebody and say, hey, okay, you did this on this. let me help you out with this. And I've done that. You know, I've helped people along the way, and I've got people that I mentor that will send me stuff they've worked on, and I'll give them the laundry list of what they did good and what they did wrong and how they could improve. And so it's like, okay, just do the same thing, but it's going to be internal within the company. And there might be some times where you have to go back and fix something or have them redo something, which is okay. Like it's a part of growth. But I think, you know, you have to have those things. And if you don't, like you said, you can't grow. Like if you don't go through those things, there's no possibility to grow, because at the end of the day, as a single person operation, there's only so much you can do as an individual. Like there's only so much work you can take in and still meet deadlines. And that's the biggest thing that I've seen people struggle with, is the deadlines, being able to meet those deadlines. That is crucial, especially in post-production, because I mean, this stuff is going to networks, it's going to streaming services. Like they have schedules. If you're even on the music side, if you work for major labels as a mixing engineer, the major label has already kind of come up with their scenario of what the rollout of this project is going to be. And so you've got to stay on top of that schedule and make sure that mix gets to mastering when it needs to get to mastering, because otherwise all the marketing and promotion they've been doing is going to be totally ruined, and that's bad for your name, bad for your brand. So you got to make sure you stay on top of those things. Yeah,
that makes sense. Well, let's talk about other individuals, you know, in a studio environment. You've got some incredible experience, you know, on the production, audio side, and then with the experience you've been able to gain on the post-production. What about other studios who have an interest in dipping their toes into post-production or expanding those services? Based on your experience, what would your recommendations be for them getting started? You know, whether it's the mindset or the experience, you know, how can a studio get started in reproducing the experiences that you've had?
You know, for a studio, it depends on what they've started as. So for me, I started as an individual in a home studio and kind of float around and do different things. Whereas if you've got a commercial facility, you've got certain overhead you've got to adhere to, you know, if you already got employees. But so if we're just thinking about this from somebody who's just opened a studio standpoint, I would say you got to take opportunities, man. You just, when something comes in, if it's within your wheelhouse to do it. Figure out a way to make it work and do it. Because what I found is you just never know where things lead to. And I know it's something that people say all the time, but I'll just be another person added to that list of people that's saying it. Opportunities come from all different directions. Like if you would have asked me when I started at Full Sail about films, I probably would have laughed and said, I don't know what you're talking about. Like I'm a music guy. I record music. I play instruments. Like I'm even at the point now, like I jokingly say I'm retired. Like I can count on one hand the amount of music playing I've done this year. And a lot of it's been in the past few weeks because I'm on another TV show. So it's become a thing to where I've fully embraced the engineer thing. Like even on the church side, I've moved from playing in church to mixing broadcasts at church. So now I don't play church on Sundays. I mix church on Sundays. And so I'm always in that engineer role. And so, but if I would have never took that first opportunity to work on that first film, I wouldn't be here talking to you right now about all my post-production experience. And who knows what that would have done for my music experience. Like it could have diminished my music experience because I didn't have the post experience. Like you just really never know. You know, don't burn bridges like that. That's a huge one. Keep all your relationships. I can honestly say a lot of the biggest things I've done have come from relationships. Kind of going back to the Greenleaf thing. The Greenleaf thing ties into the Tyler Perry thing because it was a Greenleaf session that led to Tyler Perry. So had I not been working on the music side of the Greenleaf thing, I wouldn't have met the other engineer that worked at Tyler Perry Studios to even get my name in the hat, because it's not something that's advertised that Tyler Perry was looking for engineers. Like it's not a thing. Like, so right place, right time, not making, you know, not burning a bridge with anybody. I met that guy, the music producer, we worked together at Guitar Center. So that's 2009, 2010 that we were employees together at Guitar Center. And now full circle, we're working on TV shows and films on a high level together. So it's just a beautiful thing. I mean, like that relationship has done so much for me. And another relationship, same thing. Like, you know, you build those relationships over time. And I think anybody opening a studio, like you gotta focus on relationships and getting to know people and being genuine. Like, yes, you gotta make money and all that kind of stuff, but the relationships are what leads you to those things. If you don't have the relationship, you might not get the call. You can be the best at something, but if people don't know you or you don't have a relationship with them, the chances of them calling you just because you're really good at it are slim. And I've seen that. Like I've gone through phases of being the arrogant, big-headed person because I was really good. And I knew I was really good. People told me I was really good. But you still have to dial that back and realize that, okay, yes, you're good at what you do. People know you're good at what you do, but it doesn't mean you have to act like it. It doesn't mean you have to throw it in people's faces. And, you know, so figuring out how to, people throw around humility all the time, how to be humble, how to be modest, you know, and it's a fine line. Like if anybody understand that, I understand that. It is an extremely fine line in between being confident and being arrogant. Like, but you have to find that line and walk it and just be a respectable person. Listen to clients. I think that's a big one for people because clients will tell you what's going on and what they want. For instance, if you're in a tracking session and a bass player says that the drums don't sound right or something's off, listen to the bass player. Like, yeah, he's not an engineer and he doesn't know all the technical whoop-de-woo about, oh, this is a Neve and this does that and you got to EQ something a certain way. He knows what feels right and what he's looking for from a sound perspective. And so now as an engineer, you got to figure out, okay, how do I translate that? What am I doing that's throwing this off? Great example. I was in a session with a band about a month ago, and I did some EQ and some light compression on the keyboard to get it to sit with the rest of the band. And the keyboard player goes, "What did you do with the piano?" It's like, nothing much, just a little EQ and compression. He's like, "It sounds good. Like I really like it, but it doesn't feel right when I play it. Like something's a little off." I said, "Okay, no problem." So I turned off the compressor and the EQ. I was like, "How's that?" He's like, "Oh yeah, that's much better." I left it alone.
Yep.
Bypassed it and let it be. And then when they were done tracking, put it back in. It sounds good the way it's supposed to. I'm hearing it the way it sounds. But for him as the player, it felt right for him to play it. And I think a lot of times we as the engineers and technical people, we push back on things because of our technical knowledge and we miss the whole vibe and what's going on with the musicians because we're so wrapped up in the technical side that we just completely try to override what they're saying, which what they're saying is very valid. And at the end of the day, it's probably more important than what I'm doing on the technical side, because if they're not comfortable playing, the performance isn't going to be good.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a musician. I understand that 100%. If I can't hear myself in my ears, it's a problem. If my kick drum sounds weird, my kick drum sounds weird. And I'm going to be thinking about that all the entire session because it's going to bother me until something's done about it. So I think listening to the engineers and I mean, not the engineers, but the musicians, people in the room. And I got to be honest, I learned a lot of that working in post-production. I am probably one of the few mixing engineers that do not mind clients coming in and sitting in the room while I mix. Like, I know that's a thing that people's like, oh, they can't sit in on my mix and yada, yada. I'm like, you know what? I don't mind it. And it goes back to that first film I worked in. The director came in the room, watched the film, made notes, had me change stuff on the fly while we're listening back to it. And that collaborative thing is like, oh, this is cool. And I feel like it helps things come together much faster. Like, they're in the room, they're listening to the same speakers, that you're listening to, so nobody's hearing something on their car system that has a blown out tweeter and they don't even realize the tweeter's blown out. So they're like, hey man, this song's lacking highs. And you're like, man, I cranked the highs to 12. Like, what are you talking about? Well, when you bring them in the room and they're hearing it, everybody's in the same space, y'all can talk about it. Like, okay, like, how do the highs sound now? Actually, they're fine. Cool. Then that's a way for you to insert, when's the last time you checked your car speakers out? Are they okay? No, it's been a while. Maybe you should check that out. So it gives you kind of time to build rapport, to build a relationship with them, and to just have the non-back and forth thing. It's like, okay, cool. You're hearing it this way. I'm hearing it this way. Let's talk about it. Let's listen back to it together in the same environment, and we get a sense for it. Like that's how I finish all my mixes now. Like I will do a live in-person review, and that could be either they come in the room or we do it virtually. Like there's so much technology that we have available to us now that you can literally hop on a call like we're on a call now and pipe your mix to them. They can listen to it very high quality from your session, and you guys can be in a mixed review session where y'all are going through their notes and y'all are ironing them out that way in the moment. And therefore there's no pushback. There's no, oh, well, it sounds like this. And then, you know, if you're dealing with the band, it's not, oh, the bass player hears it this way, the singer hears it this way, the drummer hears it this way. It's like, if everybody's together in the room, we're hearing the exact same thing, we can discuss the same thing. And chances are a lot of the notes they have don't really exist, you know, because they're hearing it on the system, you're hearing it, or you can tell them what you were going for and they can process it and say, you know what, I actually like that. Comes from film. It's like if I do something with a sound effect and director's like, oh, that's a little weird. I kind of explain to them, well, you see the characters doing this and I was thinking that this sound would be for this. And they're like, oh yeah, that's a really good idea. Like I see that, keep it. But if you're not in the room and you can't have that face to face, like you don't get to do that. And we all know like text messages and emails, like you get these perceived, like how somebody's tone is when their tone is not that at all. That's just how you kind of interjected into what they were saying was, but that's not how they intended it to be. So, you know, I just rather just be in the same space and let's talk about it. Let's get it, everybody in the room and just work on it together. I'm completely fine with that.
Yeah, that's wild, man. Del, you just gave us in the last like 5 minutes so many incredible points. I mean, from the importance of listening to their needs and working together to building those relationships to, I mean, just it's really great. I mean, all of this from your personal experience. I appreciate you sharing all that.
No problem.
It's been quite a story. I mean, hearing where you've come from and where you are today, it's pretty wild. I do want to give individuals the opportunity to reach out if you're comfortable with it. I mean, if individuals listening to, whether it's this podcast or the video episode, where can they find out more about your studio? Where can they connect with you?
So studio, they can go to hydrateentertainment.com and that will get them into the whole studio and what I got, my services and what I do. A little bit more about me can be found there. Instagram, you can follow me at Del Mixed It is my Instagram, and Hydrate ENT also has an Instagram page, but if you're looking for me, then you can go to Del Mixed It. Same thing on Twitter and Facebook. That I'm Del Mixed It everywhere. Type Del Mixed It in and you will definitely find me.
They'll find you, yeah.
And if bonus points for anybody who looks up Dehydrate and finds some of that stuff, but I'm sure it's still out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you stay very active on social, so I'm sure people love seeing
social,
all that you put out.
Social is huge, man. That's another nugget out there, man. Anybody who's not using social, you got to use social. Take away all of the negatives from social and all that stuff and look at the positives. Like I worked on a French gospel record. And when I say French gospel record, I literally mean the words were in French. They had to translate it to me so I could even know what they were saying. That's through social media. There's no other way for me to get clients in a whole nother country. There's no other way. Like I would have to know somebody there, or I've traveled there, or whatever. It's like, you know, and even if your name's dropped in conversations, people look for you. You know, the higher up you go, the more vetting I think people do. You know, they're not just going to hire you just because so-and-so said so. Yeah, they appreciate that person's opinion, but they're still going to go and do their own kind of research and see what you're into and the kind of work you've done. even the kind of person you are. Like people can tell a lot from your social. So I think, being active on social media and being personal to an extent, really showing insights. Like I do a lot of stuff on social media where I give tips on Pro Tools and different tricks and things that I do, or things that I found that work. And it's always taboo about sharing your secrets, and I'm at the point where it's like I have no secrets. I mean, at the end of the day, we all have the exact same tools. The same way I brought this software, you can go buy the same software and spend the time going through it. So I at least I can do is help you and kind of show you some stuff that I found. Even sessions, like somebody wants a session, I give them the session. I mean, technically they paid for it anyways. Like you paid me to do the job, and so technically it's yours anyways. Like there's no secret sauce that you're gonna get out of it. I mean, like I use so much automation in my work anyways. Like, okay, you better be able to follow automation to even figure out what I did. But the other side of that is the why I did it. And if you don't understand the why, then, you can have my template and whatever you want all day long. Your mix still won't be my mix.
Yeah, always be different. Well, that's awesome. Well, look, I really appreciate you taking some time to connect with us today and sharing some wisdom and experience. For those listening, definitely check out, Dell through the social channels he shared. We'll post them on the video and also in the show notes here for the podcast. But thank you again. We wish you the very best and look forward to connecting further.
Absolutely.
All right. You take it easy.
You too.